Welcome to the Self-Growth Nerds podcast. I'm your host, Marie, a courage coach, creative soul, and adventure seeker. Since through hiking the Pacific Crest Trail in 2019, I'm on a mission to help you embrace your most confident self so you can achieve your dreams too. If you're eager for deep conversations, big questions, and meaningful connections, join me on the quest to discovering how we can create a more magical and memorable life. Hello nerds, how are you? I'm good. We have special company today, really special company. We have Gail Muller with us, and I wanted to invite her on the podcast because I love how authentic and optimistic she is. Truly, she fits the Self-Growth Nerd logo, the yellow lemon, with her happiness and big smile and joy for life. And most of all, I wanted to invite her because she's another example, another proof that we don't have to be the stereotypical athletic 20-something to achieve big adventures. We can be slow, we can be emotional, we can be messy, and in Gail's case, we can also have chronic pain. Gail is a thru hiker, an educator, and more recently, an author. And she just wrote her memoir called Unlost. It's her first book, and I'm 2 hours in the audiobook version. Turns out it's been dangerous for my driving because I tear up every 5 minutes. So I would say, don't listen to it while you're driving. Go take a walk or listen to it in your bed. It's so good. And this is my first time meeting Gail, but I feel like I already know her because there is so much intimacy in her memoir. Gail, hi! Would you say hello to the Self-Growth Nerds and tell us a bit more about you?
Wow, what an amazing introduction, Marie. Thank you so much. Hello, Self-Growth Nerds. I am delighted to be on the podcast. My name's Gail Muller, and as you have heard, I am an educator, I am a hiker, I'm an outdoors woman, and a writer, which is very exciting now. But also, I am probably a little ball of sunshine and chaotic energy, showing that anything is possible. I'm Cornish, which is a huge part of my identity, and I've just had a lovely chat before we came live with Marie about how she has also spent time over here in Cornwall. Cornwall is the very most southwest kind of peninsula in the UK, surrounded by sea with lots of folklore around pirates and smuggling, lots of ocean. So I come from a place that in itself is wild, elemental, and natural, and that's where I've grown up. So it's really been a great start for me because throughout my life, coming back to nature is where I've felt the most relief from pain, troubles, anxiety. So I'm very lucky to live in a place like this.
Amazing. Thank you for telling us more. Before we came on, we were having this really interesting conversation, and I told Gail, stop. I need to start the recording. This is really important. We were talking about my transition from hiker and graphic designer to business owner and coach. And I was telling Gail about how when I did my transition, when I stepped into my truth, I lost a lot of followers on Instagram. But this was for the better because those who didn't like who I was becoming left, and those who stayed, you guys who are listening right now, are just all in and excited about everything I do here, and that's the people I want to surround myself with. And Gail was saying, was telling me about how she started hiking the CDT, the Continental Divide Trail, earlier this summer, and realized that she was not there anymore. She'd hiked the AT before, and she thought she wanted another through hike, but realized, well, Gail, you can tell them, what did you realize? And what happened to your following after you decided to leave the CDT?
Well, I had done the AT southbound in 2019, and then when I came home, I had a very bad injury in my foot, it was a broken foot. And by the time that had healed and rested, I was allowed out, and then COVID came. So I had planned the PCT southbound, I had my permit, then I planned the Te Aroa, I had all that organised, booked and planned, plus the Tour du Mont Blanc. So hiking was going to be the thing. And all through COVID, all through lockdown, I was waiting and waiting and waiting to get back out and do long trails, desperate, because that's where I'd found my, some real meaning, some real self-understanding, and what I had kind of thought might be my identity for a while going forward. A lot of it was caught up with the trail community. And then when we were allowed to travel again, I realized that the PCT wasn't right for that first year when we were allowed back into the US, just about, with a waiting period for us from the UK, 2-week waiting period, because people on the PCT, COVID was still very high and people were asking us not to go on the PCT. Fine. So I thought, well, I've waited so long. Maybe I'll just throw my hat fully in the ring, do the CDT, the kind of harder trail with more privation, less people, start that, do it southbound, go full on. And really, because I love hiking and I love through hiking. I'd done the Southwest Coast Path. I'd done the AT, a 630 miler, a 2,000 plus miler, and lots of other walking. So off I went, waited for 2 weeks in Mexico for the COVID quarantine period to get into the US, was denied boarding to get into the US for the CDT because actually they only count full days. So they only count getting up and going to sleep as 14 days. And I'd arrived early morning one day and was leaving near the end of the night. The next had to wait an extra day and a half. So there was a lot that went into getting into the US for the CDT. Everything was focused on it. Got into the US, got myself on a train from Seattle across, got to Glacier National Park, met my friends who I'd met briefly on the AT because they were going in a different direction, Julia and another friend from the online community, Instagram, Rebecca, lovely, amazing women. There we were. We started the CDT southbound. I was so excited. It was everything I thought I wanted and who I was. And then I realized about 2 weeks in, it wasn't for me. I wasn't the same person that came off the Appalachian Trail enjoying the brutality, the isolation, all of those things that made the AT incredible. I was trying to find that moment again on the CDT. Now, the CDT was stunning. Glacier Park was beautiful. The Bob Marshall Wilderness was incredible. There were big forest fires we were dealing with. Lots of smoke, no visibility, people being asked to move to roads for road walking instead because it wasn't safe. A woman sadly lost her life to a grizzly bear not far off trail. So a lot of things happened to make it feel slightly more precarious and dangerous and unsure. But that wasn't the problem, really. The problem was that my focus had switched. I was more interested in people and not myself and getting lost in the great outdoors. I was more interested. So, for example, we were in the Bob Marshall Wilderness. This is just before I really decided I was done. My group were a bit fitter than me. I'd got a little bit out of shape through COVID and hadn't really kind of come to terms with that and had started the CDT not in my best shape. Fair enough, whatever. But they were very competitive about the mileage. A lot of guys were with us and then in the beginning, and they liked to do big miles very quickly, 30-mile days very quickly. And it was tough going on the CDT, lots of blowdowns, it's not so well maintained, it's really big elevations and high altitude that I hadn't experienced before. Physically, it was tough. But then there were moments when I wanted to sit by a river or a stream or a lake in the middle of nowhere and just watch to see if I could see a moose or see a bear or just watch wildlife and be still and listen and soak up the moments. And there was no time because it was just go, 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 hike, hike, hike. And the CDT is a bit like that because it's long. So you have to get it done in a quick window. And then one evening we came in the Bob Marshall Wilderness about 4 days into no cell service, no outside world. We're just in the wilderness. I heard ding, 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 ding. I'm like, what is that? We're in the middle of nowhere. We came round a corner and there were 2 horses and a few mules being penned in by like string tied to trees and 2 rangers who were out for like 10 days. They had packs of food and all of their supplies on the mules. They had tools and they were out for 10 days, sleeping out in the wild with their animals, riding through the Bob Marshall Wilderness, chopping down stuff, maintaining trails, making a campfire, sitting around, offered us food. And everybody was like, this is cool. We got to leave at 6 a.m. And I thought, no, this is cool. I want to sit around the fire. I want to hear their stories. I want to know how they got this lifestyle. I want to write about them. I want to soak up their knowledge. I don't want to just keep racing through 3,000 miles of incredible characters and people and towns. I want to stop and soak it up. This isn't right. I don't just want to keep walking through life right now. I want to immerse myself in the moment of life. So when the next town came, I cried. I felt guilty. I felt like a fraud. I felt like I'd failed. And then I felt like, fuck that shit. I fuck all that shit. I've got to be true to what my gut is telling me. And whatever I needed to do on the AT, I did. And whatever I need to do now, I need to do that too. And it doesn't look the same. And that's okay, because my identity isn't tied to an activity or what other people think that I am now. My identity is tied to my authenticity and being truly myself. So you have to lead with your gut, because your gut will tell you and your heart will tell you what you should be doing. Your brain will mess with you. It will listen to all the outside influences, your Instagram following, your friends you're hiking with, who I love dearly and still am great friends with, who said, oh, don't leave, don't leave, don't leave. And I'm like, oh, maybe I shouldn't leave. And then I was like, no, got to listen to the gut. Yeah, I feel it. You can't see, but I'm beating my chest. I'm like touching where my heart is, because it's in your chest what you should do. So if you're listening to this, I guess, and you're thinking, oh, I'm going to work tomorrow, or I'm at work now, I'm listening to this at lunch while I walk around the streets and leave my office because I hate being at my desk. Your gut knows what you should do. You just have to follow it, and it will take you where you should be. It's scary, but it's the right move. And I came off trail and I talked about that openly, and I dropped some following. I dropped some followers who were on my Instagram, had some messages, like minimal messages of people saying, but you're supposed to be hiking. This is really disappointing. I wanted to see the CDT because I can't leave my town at the moment. And my condolences that you can't leave your town. I feel for you. Thank you for following me up to this point. I'm sorry I can no longer provide you what you need. Thank you very much. But
Sorry, I cannot provide you with your free outdoor entertainment anymore.
Yeah, there is Discovery Channel. If you have ever heard of that, maybe you could check it out. But I then received all of this positive support from people saying, I'm so proud of you. The pivot is so dangerous, it's so the risky thing to do, but it's so the right thing to do. I had people messaging me saying, Gail, I'm doing a job that I applied for and I tried so hard to get, and I moved away from my family and my town, adamant that it was right for me, and I got it. And I'm 3 months in and I absolutely hate it. And it's not what I thought it would be. And every day I cry going to work and I want to leave, but I feel like I can't because I told everybody I was doing it. And now you've made me help believe that it doesn't matter what other people think, that I'm going to go in and tell them I want to leave. And I was like, yes, if my choices and sharing them loudly online can help other people feel encouraged to make steps in a better direction for themselves, whoo fucking ray, that's great. So then I had an influx of people with positive mindset supporting me, and I went on and did really cool shit and had a great time that wasn't on the CDT. Kept tabs on my friends, supported them, cheered them on. Go get it, guys. Go get it. It's your dream. I'm going to get a weird little ferry to Alaska where I can pitch my tent on the top deck and live on it for 3 days.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah, it's a passenger ferry that goes up along the coast of Canada, takes you to Alaska. I'm going to try that instead. And I met amazing people who I'm friends with now. And then I did a whole bunch of other stuff. So the pivot takes you to places that will bring you even more joy than you think you're going to get following the route you think you should have taken. The route you should take is led by your gut and your heart. That was a long reply. Sorry, Marie, but I got a bit excited about it. I'm passionate about it.
I was taking notes because so many important things. So many people come to me when they're in a transition and they don't know the difference between what their brain is saying and what their heart is saying. And the thing is, your brain has all these reasons, and your heart, in your gut or in your heart, or what I call the core, what you want to do, but your core doesn't always give you reasons. Like, you're like, I feel differently. I feel like I need to leave the CDT. I feel like this, but I don't have rational reasons. And that's why it's so hard to follow. But sometimes we have to be brave enough to follow this core impulse.
Yes.
Without knowing why, just trusting that our core knows the best path for us. And we are going to understand in the future.
Yes, because our subconscious is all the time taking in stimuli and processing and thinking and making really interesting choices and decisions for us that we're not aware of, that will then come in a surge and a gut feeling. I think you're not aware of all the peripheral stuff that's being processed, but it's then being lumped together and giving you a key message, which is you don't really like your job. That's why every day when you drive there, you feel a bit sick, or you keep getting cold, or or you make every excuse not to go in. That's a message. You need to be listening to messages. I think when your job gets harder and things go wrong, it's because you're swimming upstream. You need to turn around, sit on your little rubber ring, and let the water take you in the right direction. Sit in the flow and be taken along by the flow.
Preach.
Yeah, church.
Yeah. Yeah, you feel it when you're not on your own river.
Yes.
It's funny because when I lived in London, I felt like this. That's what I remember telling my mom. I feel like I'm on someone else's river.
Yeah.
Or
I love
like
that.
battling with the current,
Yeah,
which,
going against the current.
yes. And what you said about like um, not wanting to disappoint your followers, I experienced the same thing when on the first 700 miles of the PCT, I brought my iPad with me and I was going to like document my hike with illustrations. But I quickly realized that all you do is hike and make friends and spend time with people. And I didn't want to isolate myself to draw. I felt like, oh my god, so guilty for disappointing my followers at this point. And I ended up just sending it home, and I was super relieved. And I met people who had similar struggles, like they started a vlog, for example, and
Yes,
then it
yes.
took so much energy from them, but they just forced themselves to keep going because they said they were going to do it. But sometimes we've got to cut the cord with what we said in the past and allow ourselves to change course, change our minds. Like it's only human to change your mind.
Yes, it is. And what you say there about cutting the cord and stepping into the uncertain, you do have to find courage to make that move, because you can't have a new life while you're still sitting in your old life. You think, I don't know why it's not all happening for me. All these dreams I have, it's not right. Nothing's changing. Well, nothing's changing because you haven't put yourself on the edge of your comfort zone to allow connection with something new. You have to like try and close one door behind you before you can open the next door. You can't be both static and moving at the same time. So
So true.
yeah, you have to roll forward with it, I think. And it is scary. Is it Joseph Campbell who writes that quote about if you fall, something comes up to catch you? He writes something about that. And it's true. You just have to leap. Like, I love Indiana Jones. I did my degree in archaeology and ancient classical history because I really wanted to be like Indiana Jones, which now which didn't work out because actually for all
That's
sorts of
amazing.
reasons. But I have the whip and the hat. That's another podcast. I really was just so fascinated with history and where we come from. I should have really done anthropology, but in the third Indiana Jones movie, when he's with his dad and he has to get the Holy Grail, he has to go through these different tests. So he has to like figure out some words and stand on the words that don't fall into the chasm, and he has to duck to bow on his knees so he doesn't get his head chopped off. But he has to figure out all these messages as he's going to get the Grail to make sure he doesn't get chopped up or fall in things. And there's one last one, which is called like the leap of faith. And it is a doorway that he's in, a doorway across a chasm, and it is unbelievably deep, and you can't cross it in one step or a jump. So what you have to do is you have to trust and you have to have faith that there is a way, otherwise you wouldn't be compelled to go. So he just leans out with his foot and steps down into nothingness. And then the path is actually there, but because of the angle of the sunlight, he couldn't see the path. And he picked up some sand, threw it across, and suddenly the whole bridge is there, and he went across it and saved the world, whatever it is, blah, 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 the end. But that's such a great metaphor that I keep with me all the time, that sometimes you don't see the path. You just have to put your foot out and then lean forward and down, and there will be a path there that takes you forward, for sure.
Oh, Gail, that's beautiful. I always try to explain that to my clients. My metaphor is Peter Pan. Like Peter Pan says, um, I won't be able to quote them word for word, but it's the minute you cease to believe you can fly,
Yeah.
you cease forever to be able to do it. Something like that. But
Yes.
belief is so important, and
Yep.
surrendering. Like your story with Indiana Jones, it's like when you're taking a decision, you're never going to know before taking the decision if it's the right one.
Nope. You
Because
can't
there's
know.
no right or wrong decision. You just learn along the way and trust. Like you have to be able to let yourself fall into the void. That's how you're going to grow. That's how you're going to discover yourself.
Yeah, absolutely right. And, you know, what's the worst? I mean, I say what's the worst that can happen, and that does sound trite because, of course, if people make too big a leaps, if they're foolhardy, they might lose their home or they might not be able to provide for their family. So there is risk factor, of course there is. But if you take realistic steps, you can still have mini leaps towards your dream. You just have to have a number of mini leaps that don't put your home at risk or your family at risk. You can still take, sometimes those little risks we take aren't financial, they're about personal embarrassment or being seen differently by your community. I know that when I started to write my book, I was like, oh, but then people who are in my hometown, I wanted to write about my Appalachian Trail hike. I wanted to vlog it, but a lot of the time I was thinking not about the people who were strangers online, but the people in my hometown who knew me in a certain way. I was like, oh, they'll all mock me when I come back for being like, oh, I'm so outdoorsy, when she's not. She's been unwell and she's not outdoorsy, and they were the people I was thinking of. I call them the shitty committee in my head. The shitty committee was saying, oh, don't do that, no. I came home and people were like, why didn't you post more? We wish we'd seen what you were doing. We would have rooted for you. And I realized it was my fear of humiliation, not anybody else's. Those little steps you can lean into and not put your financial situation at risk. And sometimes they're the harder ones. The finances, the money are a concrete thing that isn't about you as a human being. It's not your identity. But, pivoting about who you are, leaning into your real self and showing that to the world, that feels riskier sometimes.
Yes. You're so wise. Such a wise woman.
No, I don't know.
And we hear like you have to risk it all to have the life that you want, but I don't believe it's risk it all. You're right. It's mostly emotional risk.
Yes.
Like, yes, you can listen to your heart and then think, okay, my heart wants this. Now, how do I go about this in a way where I get to be financially stable, where I get to keep my home, where you can use your brain and your heart in their best possible way.
Yeah.
But you are going to have to take emotional risk. And that means like feeling scared that you're going to be rejected, feeling scared that you're going to be, like you said, humiliated. Most of it doesn't happen, but like what's the word in English when you're thinking ahead of time? The
prediction, the anticipation.
The anticipation of how you might feel is what's the hardest.
Yes. And the reality is never usually that bad.
Exactly. It's the anticipation that's the worst.
Yeah.
The scenarios that we imagine.
Yeah, usually what we fear is the feeling of fearing it is always usually worse than the reality of it happening. Because actually, when things happen, you deal with them in the moment, so you have some authority, like agency over them. Even if a bad thing happens, you are in it, and it is moving forward in real time, and there's agency where you can do things about it. When you're imagining bad things happening, they're not actually happening, so you are also powerless about the thing that's happening because it's not really happening, so you can't do anything to change it or make it better. You just rehearse the shit thing that's happening and sit back and let it happen. But in real time, you'll find a way through it.
You're resourceful.
Yeah, people forget that when they imagine all that can go wrong because they're imagining it and they can't do anything about it. They're just sitting in it, stagnant. So go forward, make mistakes, learn from the mistakes, and you'll look back and you will be grateful for those mistakes. And you will be grateful for the fear that you had because maybe it made you cautious, but and made you think it through and make it wise. But having fear and moving through the fear makes you much bolder for the next adventure, whatever that might be.
Yes, it expands your comfort zone. And once your comfort zone is expanded, it's like It's like I was saying in one of the last episodes, it's like an old pair of underwear. It's like once it's stretched, it cannot go back.
I mean, that's brilliant. I love it. Yeah, an old pair of knickers. Once they're grey and all baggy, there's no hope for them. They got to go in the bin.
I love that you said knickers. That reminds me of my time in London. What is it for pants? It's
Trousers.
trousers. Yes, I loved to say brilliant. That's brilliant.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. That's funny because when I was on the AT, people would be like, "Yeah, that's brilliant," in a sweet way because I didn't realize people don't say that in the same way. Oh my God, Gail, that's brilliant. Oh. And then they call people bloke, which I think is really funny. You know, bloke is a slang term for like a bloke. You talk about a bloke I met in the pub, which is a man I met in the pub.
Yeah.
But you don't use it when you say, hi mate. Hi mate. Mate could be a guy. But people started using bloke like, hello bloke. How are you bloke? And it wasn't right. But it was so glorious that I just encouraged it.
It's so cute.
Yeah. Hello bloke.
Well, speaking of hello bloke. Speaking of bloke and words and vocabulary, I want to talk about your book, Unlost.
Thanks.
And ask you, how has writing a book been similar to hiking a long trail? Do you see similarities?
Yeah, because both are processes which are frightening when you begin them or you plan them because they feel like they're outside of your experience. I'd never written a book before. It's long. It's like 95,000 words. And when I sat down with the first blank page, I was like, I don't even know what to write. How am I going to write how am I going to write a whole book? Just as you might say, how am I going to hike a whole trail? And also, you can imagine day one and day two, and then you can imagine ending. So I can imagine beginning my book, romanticize it. Oh, maybe I'll be in a cottage by the sea like a writer. Ooh, look at the other writer. And then I imagine going click, 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 ping, even though I didn't have a typewriter, but old-fashioned, click, 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 ping. And I'd be like, oh, and then the big white, thick manuscript which said Unlost on the front, and I'd be like, oh, I'm handing this in to my publisher. But the middle bit, I didn't even consider that, which took most time, obviously. And that's what you think about when you're hiking. You imagine starting with your pack and then you imagine ending. You don't realize that it's just every day the same thing in a different way.
Boring.
Yeah, boring. Walk, 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 walk. Fucking here we go again. Where's the water? I'm tired. Everything hurts. And writing was similar, but just like a trail, every day when you explore language, when you're trying to communicate ideas and your experience to somebody else, you learn about yourself. So in reflecting on the trail that I'd hiked and revisiting the stories and what I'd experienced and learned from, I learned more from it by looking back and seeing how I'd grown, mistakes I'd made. I cringed at the stuff I did that was stupid and embarrassing. Some of the choices I made were embarrassing. And that's life. You learn, and it's okay to make mistakes, and you look back and you learn again from them. They're never wasted mistakes. So writing the book was a long process, but a glorious one, with boring parts, hard parts, painful parts, just like a trail. And what's interesting is that I've had lots of great reviews for the book, like hundreds of 4-star, 5-star, lots of 5 stars, lovely, lovely, lovely. And then I get these occasional reviews. I've had 3 1-stars because they didn't like swearing. 3 people just said she uses the F word too much. I couldn't get through the first 2 chapters because of the F word. Fine, absolutely, more power to you. I'm sorry, and fuck you very much. And I didn't mean that. Sorry, that was mean. I like swearing. Sorry. And then the other reviews if there were a few unfavorable reviews, they were about my choices. And nearly all of them, maybe 4, mentioned she doesn't like to be on her own. Why does she need to make friends with people on the trail? She's not brave. Someone said, I pity her because she was so desperate to make friends and couldn't hike by herself. And she was afraid for some reason. Well, firstly, thank you for reading my book. Thank you. Secondly, I thought about those comments, and I thought, do they make me feel bad? Do they make me feel sad? And I'm like, no, because it's true. I didn't want to be by myself for the beginning of the trail. I did need the company of other people. And sometimes it made me sad or scared when I was by myself and made me feel panicky. Because I was a stranger in a different land where I didn't know anyone, hiking in the woods by myself. And for whatever reasons, and you'll read them in my book, in my life, I found things difficult because I'd had a very traumatic experience in my late teens, which made me frightened of certain things. Now, actually, I'm not ashamed for having those fears, those needs, those moments. And because really it's a story of growth, of how I overcame that. And being honest about having fear, about having needs, about learning your weaknesses and trying to improve yourself is what the story is about. So I think almost the people who think like that in the world, that people aren't allowed to make mistakes or they shame other people for going through a journey, look at yourself. What is it that you're afraid to do that you're not doing? And instead, you're here criticizing someone else who's trying to do those things and sharing about it so other people feel less shame about stuff. So I don't feel any shame when I look back at the trail or when I wrote the book about some of those less wise decisions or some of those moments where I felt scared and weak, because if I didn't go through those, I wouldn't be stronger now. And again, that harkens back to what we were just speaking about. You have to close a door and step through another door. And that's not always going to be easy. You're going to trip over and fall on your face. You're going to be embarrassed. It's going to be hard. But that's how you grow. You have one life, depending on what you believe. You have one life. Yeah. Yeah, you have one life, maybe in this iteration, in this body, whatever you might believe. But make the most of it. Grow the whole time, because when you stop growing, you ossify and you get hard and you get calcified, and then you don't move, you seize up, and everything becomes impossible and harder. Keep fluid. It's the trees and the branches that bend with the storm that don't snap and fall off on the ground. So keep
Jesus
that
Christ,
fluid motion. You know, the more you go, wow, she's done that and I wouldn't do that, that's rubbish. What are you doing? You're just a branch that's going to get broken off in the next storm. Fuck it.
Yes.
Bend.
And if you wouldn't have made those mistakes, your book would probably have been a bit boring.
Yeah, it's like, oh, look, she's really, really brave. Did the whole trail by herself. Didn't meet anyone, make any friends. Great book. Kind of shit, really. Yeah, so I think you're absolutely right. It needs to life is a tapestry. We are all multifaceted, messy, difficult, wonderful, loving, grumpy, and everything in between people. And if we're all pretending that we're not, we're lying to ourselves. And if we present that lie publicly, then people inside are going to feel like they're not good enough because all we see are the lies. It takes courage to say you're a mess, but it makes everybody else feel better.
That's so true. Oh my God. Being a mess allows other people who see your mess to show their mess.
Yeah, show your mess. It's the best.
Yeah, show your mess. It's the best.
Show your mess. It's the best. And then everybody helps each other sweep up their mess. You know, people are like, oh, I've got a mess too. Do you want me to help you clear yours up? Yeah, I'll help you clear yours up. We'll all sweep each other's mess up. And everyone helps each other. Yeah. Perfect.
And there's it's like what Brené Brown says about the arena. There's people getting dirty in the arena, and there's people in the bleachers commenting on people in the arena, but we don't have time for those people. No. And also, like, when you were reading your bad reviews, I find that there's reassurance and there's comfort in seeing the truth in negative feedback. Like, say, oh yeah, I can see what they mean. Yes, I am kind of like that. Yeah. No shame.
That's exactly how I felt. I didn't feel like, well, that's outrageous. It's not true. I thought, yeah, I did want to be, that was me. You are describing some decisions that I made earlier on in the trail. Fine. I'm fine with it. If you don't like it, that's fine. Thank you for your time.
Yeah. Wow. So much wisdom. Gail, I am loving this conversation. I have one last question for you before you go out with your new puppy.
Yeah. Bill Murray.
What did you say?
He's called Bill Murray because he's my favorite actor. So cute.
Oh, Bill Murray the dog. That's amazing. Does he have a little beanie?
No, but I need to get him like a little Life Aquatic beanie and like An overcoat with the Z for Zizou. I think I need to get a
Yes.
Zizou overcoat. Such a good idea, Marie. Thank you.
In your future projects,
Yes,
for
another
sure.
one of my future projects.
So last question is, how do you go about bringing your adventurous self in your real life? Because it's easy on the trail, but many people that listen to this podcast are hikers, and when they come back home, they feel a bit depressed and bored and unfulfilled. So what's one way that you have to bring your adventurous self in your day-to-day?
Okay, that's a really good question and quite hard to answer, I think. But I would say off the cuff that what you'd look at what makes a through hike adventurous and exciting, what it is about a through hike that makes people fall in love with it. And there's some certain key things. So there's being outdoors, that forest bathing. There's the simplicity of just looking for steps to hike, a place to camp, and water to drink. There's the joy of connection and community that you don't get in the busy world that we have outside of the trail. So those are three really important things. And a feeling of novelty and discovery, because every day, even though you're doing the same thing, you're seeing something slightly different. And there's a feeling of movement towards a goal. So I would say what I did when I came back, and what other people could do, is to try to port those key elements into our daily life. So for me, if I make sure I go outdoors every day. Easily done. You just go out your front door, even if it's for 5 minutes, and it makes a difference. I also look around my community. So if I've only got time for a half an hour walk or a 20-minute or a 10-minute walk, what I'll often do is do a little research in the history of my area and do a walk and go and see something in my local town that I've walked past 100 times before, but I'll know something more about the history of it. Maybe on this place something else was built in the 1930s. Maybe this is where a certain thing happened locally years ago that I never knew about. And then it makes the walk feel like an adventure, and I'm learning something new, and it's suddenly interesting again. The same old route is interesting because I'm putting some lenses on and looking at it from a different perspective. Novelty, there you go. And goal. You're going to see something, there's a goal. The other thing I would say is that make connections with people. That is really important and a hugely beneficial part of being on a trail. And it's an adventure in itself to build relationships and get to know people, to give people time. Think of 3 people that you haven't spoken to for years that you've lost contact with. Write them a letter, get their address, write them a letter telling them how you are and asking them how they are. Send it in the mail. See the effect, the butterfly effect that one letter or those 3 letters have on people who will open it going, oh my gosh, it's Marie. I haven't heard about her. We were at university together. That's so great to hear from her. She's doing so well. Then they take that joy out and they have an adventure, maybe contact somebody they haven't thought of for ages. There's adventures to be had, not just in the outdoors, but in our relationships, or learn a new skill that takes you towards your next big adventure. Sure, you can't get out on the trail, but you can learn how to tie certain knots, because next time you might want to hike and sleep in a tarp and not a tent. So you need to learn all the skills for putting your tarp up and practice it in your back garden. So incremental gains, community, direction, focus, and take some things out of your life as well when you come back from the trail. Simplicity. Throw away all the stuff that's in your attic, donate it, make a space in your house or your life that wasn't there before. Give away the bicycle that's in the garage that you never ride to somebody with a kid who can use it. And then suddenly you're simplifying your life, and that makes you breathe deeper and easier when you have less crap around you, I think. Sorry, that was so many things, Marie.
Gail, you said this is a hard question to answer, but you answered it beautifully and succinctly and with structure. I'm amazed. So many good ideas. And also, like, your letter idea is amazing. And you can also write to strangers that you follow online, like I did with you. Like, I didn't know you, but I loved your vibe. So I wrote to you, and now we're friends.
Yes.
And you can do that. You're allowed to do that. You don't need permission.
And you know what? What you didn't know when you reached out to me is that I had also watched you and seen you and loved your vibe. So when you contacted me with the message, you took a leap of faith. You reached out, you wrote a message, and you didn't know what was going to come back. I could say, oh, I've got no time, or no, I'm not interested, thank you. But I had, from a distance, been thinking, love to get to know her better. She seems amazing. So look, now we have a friendship from a little brave step forward. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Sometimes when people follow me online and say, hi, I don't know who they are, I will leave them a voice note this stranger and say, you followed me, I've just looked at your page, it's so nice to meet you, thank you for connecting, I love this, I love your yoga studio, it looks really lovely, wishing you all the best, have a great week. And I get one back going, oh my gosh, this is amazing, it's so great to hear your voice. And then we have just a little exchange. Then maybe we don't really ever talk again, but we just like each other's stuff. But there's a connection, a real human connection there. And it's lovely.
Everyone craves connection. They might not say it, but everyone craves connection. And don't be afraid that they're going to judge you. Most people are going to be so happy to hear from you.
Absolutely. Yeah. As long as you're respectful and don't slide in those DMs in a weird way.
Yeah, obviously. You have to be respectful.
Yeah, of course. It goes without saying. But I just giggle about some of the messages we all receive when you're on Instagram. Sometimes, but most of the time, 99% of the time, the world, that's what also through hiking shows you, isn't it, Marie? That the world is full of incredibly kind people. There was nothing in my life as good as the AT for showing me that people are wonderful, even if they have different political views, even if they don't align with you or look like you, they can be loving, warm, welcoming, the trail angels, the hikers, and that's a microcosm of the real world. So all that goodness is right out there.
Yeah, we focus on the bad so much more often because of the media.
Yeah.
But we need, and I often say that, we need to spend as much time, if not more, reveling about everything that's going good and how kind people actually are.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. Couldn't agree more.
All right, Gail, thank you so much. We'll have to have you on the podcast again.
Thanks. It's been a real pleasure. I've loved it, Marie. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. And please tell our self-growth nerds where to find you and connect with you and where they can send you a voice note.
Oh, yeah, please come over and say hi. I am on Instagram at the Gail Muller. I also have a website, gailmuller.com, and on Facebook, the Gail Muller, with a community called Unlost Outdoors. Come and join us.
Amazing. And Gail Muller is Gailmuller.
Yeah, Muller. That's correct. Oh, and check out my book, Unlost. You can get it Barnes & Noble in the US, Amazon, of course, but Bezos, well, if you feel comfortable with that, get it on Amazon or support your local bookshop. But read it and let me know what you think.
Read it or listen to it like I did, because you get to hear more of Gail's amazing voice and feel like you're next to her and she's telling you the story.
Thank you so much, Marie. It's been a joy. Thanks.
That was amazing. With her and Allison as the first guests on Self-Growth Nerds, I don't know what we're going to do next, because these two women have so much in common with their love for personal growth, adventure, imperfection. I love them. If you have any ideas for other guests that you would like to get to know on the podcast, let me know. You can always message me on Instagram at Self-Growth Nerds if you have guest ideas. And also, I'm going to open the doors to Brave and Bold again in the future. And if you resonated with Gail when she was talking about how to bring your adventurous self into your real life, so much of what she said is what we are doing inside Brave and Bold, except you're going to have a structure to follow that's going to help you get there and feel so much more fulfilled in your life. It's going to help you simplify your life and bringing some purpose and some meaning. So if that speaks to you, let me know and I'll add you to the wait list for when the doors open again. All right, I hope you loved this week's conversation and I will talk to you next week. Bye! You just listened to the Self-Growth Nerds podcast. Make sure to subscribe and to find me on Instagram at Self-Growth Nerds. If you want individual help developing the confidence to create a more meaningful and exciting life, visit selfgrowthnerds.com today to learn how. Finally, I want to thank my friend Etienne Galano for editing this, and I want to thank you, kind-hearted souls, for growing into your truest, most courageous selves every day and making this world a better, more beautiful place. My name is Marie, and I will talk to you next week.